So have you ever gone camping and froze to death even though your bag was awesome? Let's talk about camping pads today. Welcome back, Hobbits. I wanted to share with you a quick DIY camping pad that I've made, and I've wrote a blog about it in the past. And what I use for my little camping pads is this stuff here. This is called Reflectix. And what it is basically is a bubble wrap with 2 sheets of Mylar on each side. And you literally can just use it as is. Just cut to the size that you need, lay it down, and you're good to go. So let me show you what I've done with it. And like I said, I've wrote a blog about this on how to do this. But what I've done is I have glued to it a simple piece of, the little microfiber fleece. Again, just to kind of help retain that heat. So the way that I did this was I just cut this Reflectix to the size that I needed. I then sprayed one side of it with like a spray adhesive from 3M, and then I just simply laid down my piece of fleece on top of that, okay? So if you're here for this, this is all that I did. It is literally that simple. Now what you might have noticed is on the back, I do have these little black kind of, what is that? It was like a marker almost. Well, actually what it is, it's a kind of a rubber paint that I've just painted a little bit on the bottom because it's so smooth that it's very easy for it to shift and move around. That is literally it. It is that simple. So nothing crazy, super easy to do. And like I said, you don't even really need the fleece. I put that on there because I do camp a lot of times in colder weather here in the South, which is not that cold, but that little bit of fleece does help. So if that's what you're here for the video, that's it. That is literally all I was going to show you. I am going to talk a little bit more about other camping pads and show you a few more that I've made. So you can purchase really good camping pads. So for example, this is one here. It's a Therm Arrest. And what it does is it mimics kind of the same idea that my DIY pad was, which is essentially a reflective kind of layer. And then the padding part is just this kind of foam style. These have been around forever and they're great. Let me explain the differences between the store-bought and then my DIY version. The store-bought is bulkier. It works pretty well for kind of helping to reflect some of the heat back. And it does have a nice thick layer to it to get you off the ground, because that's kind of the goal here with any type of camping pad, is to get off the ground. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in the video. The benefit of this one is that it does have some really nice cushion and thickness to it for when you're trying to sleep. So if you're sleeping on the ground, this is a pretty good alternative. There's now inflatable versions of these, so hop online. There's tons of versions of these, but that's what makes them a little bit better than kind of my DIY version. Now, the benefit of my DIY version is it does compact down very easily and can get very small. It doesn't give you nearly as much cushion now. That's the only issue, but it's still somewhat okay. I've slept on these. My kids have slept on these. I've made them for pretty much everybody. I take this Hammock Camping, which I'll show you that one in just a second. So this is a pretty good alternative, at least just to get you off of the ground, because that's the main thing that you're trying to do. So this is great for whenever I go backpacking and just have to kind of pack everything in. So if I just kind of show you the wrap here, as I said before, you can see that it's, sorry if you can see this, just a little bit of bubble wrap with the 2 Mylar sheets on each side. And one thing to know about camping pads is the goal of all your pads are to get you off the ground, right? Because when you're touching the ground, you're transferring heat, okay? So here's what's happening. You might have a 0-degree sleeping bag or a 50-degree or 20-degree or whatnot. The reason that those bags are able to maintain heat is because the stuffing traps air. You heat that air and you create this kind of, warm blanket essentially around you. That all goes away when you lay on the ground or in a hammock with the sleeping bag, because now you're compressing that sleeping bag. That's why you feel that transfer of heat. It feels cold to you, but what you're doing is you're transferring heat through that bag to whatever you're laying on, most oftentimes the ground. So that's why you might feel like, ooh, my back's cold, but my front's nice and toasty. All that a camping pad is designed to do is really keep that from occurring. So this actually works quite well. You can use this also in conjunction with something else to eliminate some of that heat loss, because if you're thinking, oh, I'll just put down one of those emergency blankets on the floor and sleep on that, that's not gonna work. All that the Mylar does, the silver part, is reflect back the heat that you radiate. It does not prevent any transfer of heat because of touch, okay? So let me kind of explain. If you are boiling water, you can put your hand right next to that pot and feel that heat, right? So if you put Reflectix next to that, it'll bounce that heat back and forth, right? So that's what the Reflectix, the silver Mylar, does, okay? If you were to touch that pan, you would immediately burn your hand because it's direct transfer of that heat from the pan to your hand. That's what the Mylar doesn't prevent, right? So the silver lining, if you just put that on the floor, it's not gonna do anything for you. The bubble layer here is keeping you off the floor, or the ground rather, and then the Mylar is kind of reflecting back some of that heat. So this works, but if you're gonna be in super cold temperatures, this might not be the best recommendation for that. Now, with that said, I've done a two-part with this build. Now this is specifically for hammock camping. So if you're a hammock camper, this is something you might wanna check out. Another thing that I've done is I've purchased a very thin yoga mat. Again, you can go to your sporting goods store and buy these. I got for the thin one because that creates a really good barrier between that heat transfer. And then I've paired it with a specially cut Reflectix DIY camping pad. And I've slept in hammocks, which means you're up off the ground, so you've got airflow, with no quilt, no underquilt, just these two things. And I did have a 0-degree bag, but I was in 20-degree Fahrenheit, 20-degree weather. So that's pretty cold for here where I live. Now for you hammock campers, what you might notice is anytime you try to put a pad that's not specially made for hammocks, they can bunch up on you. So what I've done is I've cut little slits, as you can see here, little V's, so that this allows this pad to fold over itself. So you just kind of separate those out so that whenever this is in the sleeping bag, it allows this to kind of bunch up at this corner so that it can overlap and you don't have those kind of ridges. So I did the exact same thing. It's just that I cut it much wider. It's actually probably too wide, but it works fine for me. But it's the same principle. By using the yoga mat and by using the little Reflectix liner that I have here, I actually get really good reflective heat back and a lot of really good insulation. And I've used this setup numerous times. Like I said, I camped in like 20, 30-degree weather where it's really, really cold, ice everywhere, and I never got cold because I had a nice liner under me and I was suspended in the air. So that's it. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Camping pads are a necessity. I take students out all the time, and that's one thing that I see that a lot of people don't think about. I kind of take it for granted because I know about it, but a lot of people don't. So if you're looking for some type of camping pad, you can easily go purchase a pre-made one and not even sweat it. And these things work great. But if you want kind of a cheaper DIY option, go buy a small roll of Reflectix and you've got it. You can tweak it kind of however you want it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned. I'll try to get some more videos out as soon as I can. Bye.